Hello everybody, it's Friday again, and we're here for our shout-outs, our groaner of the week. And if you're all good and behave yourselves for the first little bit, I might read you chapter 12 for the Frank and Abby story. All right, let's get to it, shall we? Our first shout-out this week is for James Sween. James has a great channel. I encourage you to go over and check him out. He used to be in the flea market business, where he traveled around from flea market to flea market with a trailer of goods to sell, and he actually did a video telling his story and experiences about that. And he does videos on other interesting things as well. So quite an interesting gentleman and a good storyteller. So check out James Sween. Our second channel we're going to shout out is Mudnut59. He's a fellow Canadian, but he's from the neighboring province to the east, from Manitoba. But he does metal detecting and a few other things. Has a nice Jeep and four-wheel drive pickup truck. And he hangs around with a couple of other fellows who I'll shout out maybe next week. But check out Mudnut59. And last but definitely never least, from the state of Washington in the U.S., great fan of the Volkswagen and owner of a nice-looking Volkswagen Beetle Baja is the Big W. So be sure and check out the Big W and his adventures. Does road trips, does things about his VW club, and some other interesting things as well. So the Big W. So those are our three channels for this week: James Sween, Mudnut59, and the Big W. All right. Everybody was very good. I didn't hear any griping or groaning or complaining or any, "Are we there yet?" or "Come on, get on with it." So I'll be nice and I will read you chapter 12, because you're probably just dying to know what happens, right? All right. Remember last week Abby and Frank had just jumped into the rental car that they had to head to Lauder City to the police department. I have to confess that I drove most of the trip to Lauder City a bit over the speed limit, but I pulled into the parking lot at the LCPD within 2 minutes to spare. Abby and I hurried inside, and then, as is usual, ended up waiting for 15 minutes before we were ushered into the chief's office. Fate and Sally were already there, and Sheriff Barrett walked in right behind us. After Abby formally introduced me to the chief and we were all seated, it was the sheriff who started things off. "The chief and I asked you all to come here this afternoon so we could bring you up to date on what has been going on. Last night at 11:45, the Highway Patrol spotted a car heading west on Highway 44 that fit the description of Frank's stolen sedan. They followed at a distance while the license plate number was run. The plate came back as being for a 2002 GMC half-ton registered to Debbie Deringer. At that point, they attempted to pull the vehicle over, but ended up in a high-speed chase. They radioed ahead, and another unit deployed spike belts just before the state line. Long story short, Debbie and her passenger, Robert Thomas, were apprehended. So, Frank, we have your car back, but it's going to need 4 new tires, and unfortunately for you, we will have to hold it as evidence for a few days. Debbie and Robert were brought here to the Lauder City Police Department and booked on numerous charges. They went up for arraignment this morning and were denied bail. They will be remanded until trial, and the judge ordered that they are to be tried separately. The trial date isn't until October 11th, but you will need to be available for the trial." The sheriff paused a moment to let what he had said sink in. "Chief Baldwin, do you want to fill them in on what your investigators have learned from questioning the suspects?" "I'd be happy to," the chief said as he leaned back in his chair and put his feet up on the corner of his desk. "First, Pastor Wainwright, Frank and Abby, I owe you an apology for the behavior of Detective Monroe, or should I say ex-Detective Monroe. He's been demoted to Traffic Division. If he'd done his job properly from the start, this whole situation would likely have ended last week. so please accept my apology on behalf of the Lauder City Police Department for the lousy police work and lack of interest taken in your case. I willingly take part of the blame for assigning the case to Monroe to start with." The three of us acknowledged the chief's apology and thanked him. He then continued and filled us in on what they had learned. "We separated the two suspects and played them against each other. Robert is a tough nut and wouldn't say anything other than to deny any involvement in the whole affair and to ask for a lawyer. He claims he is just Debbie's boyfriend and that she had invited him to go with her to Atlanta for a couple of weeks' holiday. The evidence, however, tells a different story. The van in the impound yard yielded only one set of prints. It had been thoroughly wiped down, but whoever did the job forgot to wipe down the stolen license plates and the bumper beside them. We lifted several clear fingerprints from both surfaces that match Robert's. They had also left the carpet that they had rolled the pastor in to remove him from the church in the back of the van. Hair samples and DNA from the hair roots, I'm sure, will match the pastor's. A few fiber samples pulled from the backside of the carpet do match clothing we've taken from both suspects' homes. The CSI people also found Debbie and Robert's prints in and around the fallout shelter in which you were held." Here the chief paused and took a sip from his coffee cup. He looked at his cup for a second, then looked at us and shook his head. "I'm sorry, where are my manners? Would any of you like a cup of coffee?" We all declined, but thanked him for the offer. He then continued. Debbie was a different story. She asked for and got a lawyer, whose advice she then chose to ignore. She turned on Robert, hoping that by cooperating with us, she might get some leniency. So the basic story, according to Debbie, is this. Since Robert graduated from seminary, he has applied to a large number of congregations seeking a pastorate. He did have a few interviews and was twice invited to guest preach, but no job offers were forthcoming. He thought that through his grandmother's influence, he could get hired on at Salem Tabernacle as an assistant or associate pastor. Debbie says that when that didn't happen, he threw a fit and decided that the only way he would get what he deserved, meaning the senior pastor's job at Salem Tabernacle, was to get rid of Pastor Wainwright. And so the whole kidnapping scheme was hatched. Robert was sure that the congregation liked him enough that they wouldn't even bother forming a pulpit committee to look for a new pastor, but would just appoint him to the position. He promised Debbie that once he was the senior pastor, he would marry her. They carried out the plan perfectly. Debbie flew out to Kansas and stole a van that matched the one from the local hardware store, so that if anyone happened to see the van at the church and in some way managed to connect it to her, she could claim that it was a different van. She asked her cousin Jared to pick up some plywood and bring it to the farm for her, knowing that he would have to borrow the store's van to do the job. She then soaked a soft spot in the farmyard to make it muddy and directed Jared to put the plywood in the barn, knowing he would most likely get the van stuck. And as we know, he did. She told him that the tractor wasn't running and that as soon as she got it going, she would pull the van out. She pretended to work on the tractor until late in the evening, then told Jared that she was tired and would finish it in the morning. They sat and talked for a bit and drank a few beers. She spiked Jared's beer with some ketamine, and then she left Jared on the sofa fast asleep. She says she injected him with a bit more in the morning to keep him asleep. The reason she did this was that she thought he could be her alibi if someone said they saw her in Lauder City. Once she was sure Jared was out for the count, so to speak, she used the tractor to pull the hardware store van out of the mud, unloaded the plywood, then walked over to the neighbor's farmyard, which is just a quarter-mile down the road. Her neighbors are away, and so she used their barn to hide the stolen van. She drove it to Lauder City. She had used their barn to hide the stolen van. She drove it to Lauder City and picked up Robert at the mall. It was his idea to change the plates on the van for those of a car in the mall parking lot. They then drove to the church and waited down the road until they saw Sally leave for lunch. Then they drove over to the church and backed up to the door. Robert had previously purchased a large carpet that matched the one in the entranceway to the office. They unloaded the rolled carpet and carried it into the church, then quickly unrolled it on top of the other one. Robert then quietly slipped down the hall past the pastor's office and waited. Debbie stood out by the front desk and called hello to draw Pastor Wainwright out of his office. As soon as he stepped through the doorway, Robert coshed him on the head with a small baseball bat he had brought for the purpose. They then gave him a shot of ketamine to ensure he would remain out, rolled him up in the carpet, carried him out to the van, and headed out. They stopped back by the mall for Robert to pick up his car, then drove out to the farm. The only change in their original plan was that Robert wanted to kill Pastor Wainwright and bury him somewhere on the farm. Debbie talked him out of it, hence your imprisonment in that fallout shelter. They then drove back to Lauder City, wiped down the van to destroy any fingerprints, and abandoned it in the warehouse district. Robert drove Debbie back to the farm, and she says she walked in the door just as Jared started to wake up. She then just went about running her farm and feeding you, Pastor, the chief sighed. The rest of the story you know. We all sat in silence for a moment, trying to absorb the enormity of the whole affair. Sadly, fate broke the silence, it would have been for nothing, because there is no way the congregation would have hired Robert. The board had a meeting after church last Sunday and already decided we didn't even want him for our interim pastor until we learned the fate of Pastor Dennis. We have already contacted a retired pastor over in Rockside to fill in. Sorry, Pastor. No need to apologize. You had no way of knowing if I would be found or not, so you had to do something, Pastor Wainwright said soothingly. There is one more thing, however, Chief Baldwin said. Mr. Harvey, you could be charged with running a detective agency without proper licensure, and that would be a hefty fine and possibly jail time. Suddenly the room seemed very warm, and the chair in which I sat not so comfortable. Abby gasped and reached over to squeeze my hand. Now, just a minute, Pastor Wainwright started to protest. The chief raised his hand and cut the pastor off. I said could. I did not say that he would be charged. The sheriff and I have talked it over and have decided that given the fact that if it hadn't been for your work and dedication to this case, it might not have been solved, and Pastor Wainwright might have ended up moldering away in that old fallout shelter for who knows how long. So here is the deal. We will give you a free pass on this one, but we expect you to study for and get your private investigator's license as soon as possible. In the meantime, no more cases. Do you agree? Yes, I mean, what choice do I have? Oh, and thank you for this free pass. Just don't make us regret it, the sheriff stated. The chief and I both feel indebted to you and will gladly be references for you to get your license once you have fulfilled all the requirements. Do you have any questions? No, sir. I'll get right on to finding out what I need to do to get that license. Perhaps this will help, said the chief as he handed me a large manila envelope. That contains information on the state's requirements for a private investigator's license and where and how to go about achieving them. If you have any questions or need any help, please feel free to call me. That goes for me too, the sheriff added. Well, thank you both again. I really do appreciate this, I said. The DA's office will be in touch with each of you regarding your testimonies and what to expect, the chief said. In the meantime, I have other cases that need my attention, so if you don't mind, I'll bid you all good day. We all shook hands and left the chief's office, each headed to enjoy life as it should be, without the stress of a case on our shoulders. Abby and I headed over to my insurance agent and filled him in on the situation with my car. He shredded the claim forms that he had filled out and said to get in touch with him once I knew the condition of my vehicle. The downside was that he did inform me that my coverage wouldn't pay for the tires, which were shredded by the spike belts. We made it to the clinic in plenty of time for my appointment. Then, of course, we had to wait 45 minutes to have an x-ray taken. The radiologist did a cursory exam of the x-ray and said he couldn't see any sign of a fracture. I thanked him and took my leave. Abby and I then went to Bergman's Bistro for a celebratory dinner. I must say, it was a much nicer meal than the last time we were there. This time there was no stress, no case to discuss, and our relationship was no longer just professional. Life was indeed looking good. Praise the Lord. Well, that's the end of chapter 12. And so next week we will have chapter 13. You thought the story was over, but no. Tune in next week for chapter 13. We'll find out where things go from here. All right. I hope you've enjoyed that part of the story. Yeah, you're saying he's just dragging things out. Well, of course, any good story drags things out, right? Any good storyteller drags things out. All right. Now the moment you've all been dreading with great excitement and sitting on the edges of your seat to hear, but moaning inwardly. All right, I'll keep it short today. All right. Did you hear about the inventor who came up with a special knife that would slice 2 loaves of bread at the same time? Well, it went over really well, and he ended up selling his patent to a local bakery that was very, very excited to get it. So then he thought, what do I do with myself? And he decided, well, he could go one better than that. And so he developed a knife that would cut 3 loaves of bread at one time. And he managed to sell that to a different bakery. And of course, sitting at home now with the money he'd made from the 2-loaf knife and the 3-loaf knife, he decided he needed something to do with his time. And so he tinkered around in his workshop and he came up with the ultimate, a knife that would cut 4 loaves at the same time. And so was born the world's first 4-loaf cleaver. I can't even groan at that one, it's so bad. Alrighty. Have a great weekend, my friends, and we'll see you on Tuesday, if not before, but definitely on Tuesday for cooking and baking, maybe before then with some special video, maybe to do with metal detecting or something else. And if you've watched to this point, congratulations, because as most of you who are regulars know, I have now passed 600 subscribers. I believe we're around 621 at the moment. And so I am going to give away a special gift, just one, to one lucky subscriber. So all you need to do is leave a comment on this video down below. Only one comment, please. And I am going to number the comments as they come in, or as they show up on my screen, 1 to whatever. And then I will probably employ the use of the what do I call that thing? The Selectomatic 2000. And we'll toss, which is my my clothes dryer, and we'll toss the balls in there from numbers 1 up to whatever we have, and whoever we draw will win the special prize. Now, rules. First of all, make it clear that YouTube has nothing to do with this giveaway, so if you don't win, don't complain to them that they cheated or they did something bad, because this is solely on me. So it's my deal, and I promise you I will not cheat. Whoever wins will purely be by the luck of the draw. Second rule is you must have a mailing address where I can mail your prize. I still have a prize sitting in my office waiting for the person who won it to come up with a mailing address, because they don't want to use their home address, and they won the prize, so I want to make sure they get it, but I'm still waiting for them to figure out a way for me to mail it to them. So I don't want to have that happen this time. So you must have a mailing address, and you must be eligible to win prizes in whatever jurisdiction you reside. So if where you live says that if you're under a certain age, under the age of majority, and you can't win prizes, then sorry. Of course, I don't know your age, so I'll just have to trust you. But if you're 3 years old and your state requires you to be 18 to win a prize, then please don't enter. Or put a note in your comment. If you feel like you need to leave a comment, just put a note in there saying that you aren't eligible, so I know not to count you. All right, so pretty simple rules, and you must be a publicly subscriber to this channel. And good luck to all of you. And I hope you'll like the prize. You won't know what it is until you get it. I'm not even going to show it, but it's nice. All right? Anyone who's seen anything I've given away in the past know that I usually don't give away garbage, so it'll be something nice. So, as I say, leave a comment on this video. You must be a subscriber. You must be of the age of majority, and eligible to win prizes in your jurisdiction. You cannot hold YouTube in any way responsible for anything to do with this giveaway because they are in no way involved. And I wish you all luck. So until my next video, I bid you adieu. God bless, take care, and stay safe.